Hi, I'm Allison Zmuda, and this is part two of my conversation with the fantastic Mike Anderson. Welcome, Mike.
Hi again, Allison.
Hello. And this is really a continued conversation around Mike's ninth book, the latest one, Tackling the Motivation Crisis. So this focus is going to be on the 6 intrinsic motivators. So I know we're going to run through what the 6 are, but I also want to sort of make a bridge between the conversation we were having in part 1 and the conversation we're about to have in part 2. So part 1 was really starting to step back and really lament a little bit about the kind of attitudes, behaviors, dispositions we're seeing in our learners right now. And we started with the idea, something prolific that Mike wrote, that children are being taught to refocus their attention away from the joy of learning and to what their teacher wants them to do. So in part 2, we're going to really start talking about, all right, so if we're moving toward a more joyful, powerful, playful learning experience, what are those key 6 intrinsic motivators, and how can we begin to cultivate and grow them? So, Mike, let's start with fun, because you started to mention fun in part 1, and fun and joy are intimately connected. Fun not as radio listener, radio entertainer, circus entertainer fun, but fun meaning there is that level of richness and joy in the complexity of the experience. So let's get started.
Yeah, I mean, we all know what happens when we say to our kids, okay, everybody, we're going to play a game today in math. Their eyes light up. They don't even know what the game is yet, but they're already more engaged because they sense that play is on the way. And we are playful creatures as a species. We're like otters and dolphins and dogs. Like, play and joy is hardwired into something. It's something that we crave and need. And actually, as we think about all of these intrinsic motivators, that's a really important thing to understand, is that we could also call these psychological needs.
Yeah.
So our kids are going to come to us looking for a sense of playfulness and joy. And anytime we can work that into the learning experience, even in small ways, they're going to be more engaged and self-motivated.
Now, one of the things that I adored as I was reading the book, and again, it's an absolutely fabulous book, is the high school physics teacher that did the Coyote Roadrunner cartoon episode. Can you just give a quick snippet on that?
Yeah, it was one of the ways that kids could explore some of the laws of physics that were happening in the class that they were learning about. Is they could watch a Coyote and Roadrunner episode and try and identify all the laws of physics that were being broken in the episode. I mean, how much more fun is that than reading a textbook and writing short summaries of, some of the laws of physics? It's such a simple yet powerful example of how even something that we might consider possibly as dry content doesn't need to be.
Yeah. And so I think that actually bridges between fun, which is our first intrinsic motivator, to the idea of competence. So talk about how fun and competence are related, especially because you have to know about the laws of physics to know what is actually being broken.
So it's really interesting that you want to make that connection between those two. I got into a really interesting conversation/debate with our friend Robin Jackson at an ASCD conference years ago when I was working on some of the ideas for this book. And she was arguing that fun is not a motivator by itself, that it's the result of the other motivators in action. So when you're feeling competent at something, you're feeling successful, that's more fun. If you have a sense of power and control, you can have more fun. So I think there's a little bit of truth there also, although I did stick to my guns and keep fun as its own separate thing. But in thinking about competence, it's almost impossible for people to be motivated about something that they feel incompetent about. And when we feel a sense of competence or even an appropriate level of challenge, when we look at a task and we think, ooh, that looks kind of hard, but I think I can do that. Yeah. That can get our juices flowing. Then we can be sort of like, ooh, all right, this is going to be fun. I'm willing to dig into this. Yeah. If we look at a task and think, I don't even know where to start, or I'm terrible at this, I can't do it, it's almost impossible to move forward. It partially explains why I can watch a movie like Footloose and think, I want to dance like that. That looks so much fun. And that I'm doing absolutely nothing about it. because my very realistic perception of my own dance abilities is providing a barrier to me following through about actually trying to, pursue that interest.
And so the interesting dynamic about competence, especially when competence and fun are actually connected to one another, is that I need to know a little bit of background context. I need to have a level of skill so I can step in and actually stand up and do the choreography moves. So I think the idea of like even swaying side to side, if I feel incompetent in doing even just that, there's a level of reluctance. There's a level of ambivalence. Can I see myself successful in doing this? So I think competence and fun, yeah.
And fear, like all of these intrinsic motivators can be demotivators when they're working in reverse.
Yeah.
If you feel incompetent as a student and you're about to be asked to do something that you think you can't do,
right,
you're likely to move into fight, flight, or freeze and either avoid the task or explode or figure out some way of getting out of it. When we see kids who are refusing to do work, a knee-jerk reaction that we have is, oh, this kid just doesn't care. They just don't care about learning. They don't care about school. I think probably they care a lot, but they're just so worried that they can't do it that it's way safer psychologically to not try and not fail than to try and fail.
And so the bizarre part right now out of all of this is that the extrinsic motivating systems, the behavioral systems that are designed to sort of get kiddos in line, potentially are an offshoot of a learning experience that was not designed in a way that they can actually see themselves as being successful. And so to try to think about this, the synergy of that is that oftentimes as I continue to think and work and collaborate in schools, it's very much grounded in the learning design itself. Yes. Are there inroads? Are there ways that we're actually growing a level of competence so that students can actually roll up their sleeves and enjoy the complexity of the problem, the challenge, or the creation they're asked to do?
Yes. So when we see a kid who's struggling with engagement, instead of assuming that they don't care and then thinking that it's our job to make them care, which is where all those extrinsic motivational systems come from, maybe instead we should think, what's the barrier getting in this kid's way?
Yep.
Do they need a little bit of background knowledge? Do they need to set some of their own goals or ask some of their own questions? Like, what are some of the ways that we can tap into their intrinsic needs for competence, for fun, for some of the others that we're about to talk about?
Yeah, well, let's do that right now. Let's go to number 3. Let's do curious next. So I know I'm going wildly out of order just to try to shake you up a little bit, but at the same time, competence and curiosity also very much go hand in hand.
Oh, so yeah. All of these connect. When I do work with teachers and we watch a video of like awesome academic work in action, and I have teachers try and pull out like what were the intrinsic motivators activated there?
Yeah.
Very often we'll all look at the same clip and think one thing is 4 different motivators because they really do all connect. So curiosity is about tapping into the things kids are naturally curious about or interested in. Like I have always been interested in animals. When I was 7 or 8, my mother came up to put me to bed one night and sat down on the edge of my bed and a grasshopper landed on her leg. And she looked around the room and realized there were bugs all over my curtains because I'd spent the day as a kid in the summer collecting bugs and letting them go in my room because I wanted to create a zoo in my bedroom. Like, so even now as a 51-year-old, I'm out gardening in the garden and a toad will jump out of the bushes and I drop my tools and lie down in the grass and look at the toad. I will read books about amphibians and reptiles. I will watch boring documentaries, on TV because I'm fascinated by that content. Yeah. So anytime we can help pull the things that kids are curious about or interested in into the curriculum, we're going to have kids who are more engaged. And just a really simple example of this was when I taught 5th grade. I remember one year I had a reader who was really struggling and he had a hard time finding books that he wanted to read. Once I found out he was into skateboarding, I went through my classroom library and pulled every book that I could find that had any connection to skateboarding and put them all in one book bin and labeled it skateboarding so that Cody could go to that bin and know that there were books that he would be interested in really easily. So that's an example of connecting curiosity with what we're doing.
Yeah. And then based on what you're just describing now, let's go into the 4th intrinsic motivator, which I want to talk about autonomy.
Yeah. So the creators or co-creators of self-determination theory in psychology, and Edward Deci and Richard Ryan, they argue that without autonomy, you can't have true self or intrinsic motivation. That if we don't have some power or control over what we're doing or how we're doing it, that maybe we could have hardcore compliance. We could even be energetically and happily compliant. But if we don't have any autonomy, if we're just doing what somebody else is telling us to do, or we don't know why we're doing it, we're just doing it because we think we're supposed to, it's awfully hard to be truly self-motivated about that task. So autonomy, I mean, I think all 6 of these motivators are important. Autonomy is right up there toward the top of the list as far as importance go, if what we're looking for in kids is self-motivation.
You know, it's interesting too, because when you have curious and autonomy next to each other, I think one of the typical fears that I hear, especially when you're personalizing learning, when you're trying to grow a level of inquiry and idea generations, you're dealing with the reality is that kids are going to be scattered all over the place. So different kids are doing different questions, and how do we begin to even sort of manage or think about that? And so trying to figure out the intersection of curiosity and autonomy is the broader frame. The broader frame can be learning to become a more skillful researcher, or the broader frame could be finding wonderment and awe and sharing those ideas and reporting that out. But that broader frame then still has the capacity for kids to go exactly where they want to be. And you shared example after example of teachers doing just that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so we can having kids have some autonomy and dig into things they're curious about does not mean that learning is a free-for-all and that we suddenly throw all of our content standards and units out the window. It's about taking those content standards and units and finding ways, helping kids find ways of connecting that to what they care about. Like I was doing a unit once teaching 5th grade in conflict in US history, and had a student do a research project on Jackie Robinson because he was a huge baseball fan, and Jackie Robinson was instrumental in the civil rights movement, which was absolutely connected with the unit. So that's a sort of simple example of how those things can work together.
Well, and then that will lead us into our 5th intrinsic motivator, which is purpose. So it's interesting because purpose is something that you can say to a student, the purpose behind this is X, but ultimately the purpose actually needs to resonate with the students. So can you share a little bit about what purpose is and sort of how to bridge that between what the teacher is describing as the purpose or the purposefulness of this particular project or what have you, versus it's something that students not only believe, but they are actually inspired by?
Yeah, this is so important because I think we've all had kids, certainly if you teach in the upper elementary school grades and above, you've had kids who've said, why do we have to do this? When am I ever going to use this again? Why are we learning this? That's such a great question. We should encourage kids to ask that question, not get grumpy when they do it, because what they're doing is searching for purpose. They're saying, I need to know the why before I invest my energy in this. And I think actually, as educators, we're actually really good at explaining purpose to kids. We just do it in boring, grown-up terms. Usually some version of, you'll need this someday. You know, when you get to 6th grade, your teachers are going to expect you to know how to write in a complete paragraph. That's why you have to learn this now. Or when you go to high school, your teachers are going to expect you, if you take a lab science course, to know how to write up a lab report. So we keep explaining because the reason they are doing something now is because 10 or 12 months from now, or even further away, they might need it. That is not sufficiently compelling for a kid who might be struggling in the moment. So we need to craft purpose that resonates with kids. Taking what you've learned and sharing it with your classmates feels purposeful in the now. Oh, wait, I'm going to get to share about what I'm learning about Jackie Robinson with other kids. All of a sudden, I care a little bit more about my projects and my work because I'm going to be sharing it with other people. Or we're creating a whole class bulletin board to teach the school something that we're learning about this content. So our purpose is to add really cool information to that bulletin board. That feels like it's got some more immediate kid value. So that's the key with purpose. It's not about explaining why it's in the curriculum or the reason you should care is it's on the state test. It's about making sure that the purpose we articulate and help kids articulate matters to them in the moment.
And it's fascinating too, because you're thinking about not as a rationale, but you're thinking about it being a compelling motivator in terms of how does it actually drive your thinking, your analysis, your generating of ideas. And when you're sticking with that, that will give you an opportunity not only to gain the foundational knowledge you need, but to also demonstrate a level of excitement and fascination that is intoxicating to students and the teacher, which leads me right into our last and final one, which is number 6, belonging.
Yeah, so Dici and Ryan would argue that autonomy is perhaps the most important motivator, because without autonomy, you can't have intrinsic motivation. Abraham Maslow might disagree and say that belonging is even more important. When you think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, belonging is just barely above our need for food, water, shelter, physical safety. So we know that kids come to us each day needing connection with us and with other kids. And so this is not about having kids do icebreakers at the beginning of the semester so that they can then work together. It's about making sure we're meeting their needs for belonging and connection through everyday learning. Even something as simple as a structure of partner chats woven throughout a class period gives kids the opportunity to share and talk with each other and gives them a little bit of affiliation and connection with others. So that's the key to belonging. It's through the academic work and a part of the daily work.
Well, it's interesting too, because that was one of the real worries that we have in classrooms over the past year and a half, because students were out of the habit of having that level of belonging and connection. So I think part of it was anxiety or fear related to COVID, but part of it is just being out of practice. So can you share an example of a way to actually continue to grow the sense of belonging as part of an example in a particular subject area?
Well, how about we think about, I mean, this is the beginning of the school year. So why don't we especially think about how do we grow that at the beginning of the school year? Because we might look 2 or 3 months down the road and say, we want kids engaged in really rich, deep collaborative projects where they're all working as a team and they have different roles and they're working together toward common goals. Well, how do we get there? At the beginning of the year, we got to start by building social safety. So one of the things I often say to teachers is, I'm all for student choice, but letting kids pick their own partners is a choice we should not do most of the time. And especially early in the year, we should be assigning partners. It's like going to a wedding and you go to the reception and you see your name on the table and you're like, phew, I don't have to figure out where to sit. I'm sitting next to Uncle Frank, which is kind of a bummer, but at least I know where to go. So at the beginning of the year, to keep things so safe, to make sure that all kids are included in partner chats, that all kids, like there's not a choice about whether or not to work with someone or who to work with, that we're almost over-structuring it early and then building their skill set slowly through very short partner chats and eventually slightly longer partner chats and then trio chats and then whole class conversations so that over time we build their skill set around collaboration so that they're able to do that really awesome in-depth work later on.
Yeah, and that's going to be leading us into our part 3 conversation on more small, practical, and very mighty ways of making those moves into growing these intrinsic motivators. So Mike, thanks for joining me and looking forward to seeing you in part 3.
Absolutely. Let's do it.